3 hours after my father's funeral, my brother changed the locks on the house while casseroles were still stacked on the kitchen counter and sympathy flowers were dying by the sink. He did it in front of our aunt, 2 neighbors from Beachview, his wife, and a man from church who had carried my father's casket that morning. Nobody stopped him. Nobody even asked him to wait. Connor held the new brass keys in one hand and a black trash bag in the other. Then he set the bag at my feet like he was dropping off groceries, not pushing his sister out of the home she had just finished helping our father die in. "Dad made it simple," he said. "House is mine. You need to go." I should have been crying. I should have been too broken to think. But I was watching his code. Because before he locked the front door, he walked back into the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and slipped a thick yellow envelope inside his jacket like he thought grief had made me stupid. Then he looked at me and said, "Read it." That was when I knew he was scared of paper. The worst part was not getting pushed out. It was hearing my brother's favorite trick come back at the exact moment our father was gone. He said one sentence like it settled everything. "Read it." That was not his phrase. It was my father's. My dad used to say it whenever Connor started translating documents into whatever version helped him most. Tax bill, repair estimate, insurance form, it did not matter. Dad would lean back, hold out his hand, and say, "Do not tell me what it means. Read what it says." Standing on that porch with a trash bag at my shoes, I heard the echo of that line so clearly it cut through the numbness. And suddenly the yellow envelope mattered more than the lock. Because my father had warned me about one thing a week before he died. If anyone rushes the paperwork, stop listening. If anyone summarizes it for you, stop them. At the time, I thought he meant grief makes people careless. I was wrong. He was not warning me about confusion. He was warning me about Connor. And he had been right all along. Before I tell you what happened at the lawyer's office. The next morning, tell me where you are watching from. Because for about 12 hours, my brother looked untouchable. Then paperwork entered the room, and the man who had just thrown me out started acting like reading was suddenly hard. My name is Elena Ruiz. I am 31 years old. I live in Brookline, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I work as a patient access coordinator at a rehab hospital. And right now I am telling you this, because grief did not break my family apart. Control did. By the time Dad died, I was tired, underfed, and running on habit, but I was not confused, and that mattered more than Connor realized. I am the younger child. The quieter one. Not weak. Just harder to read. I was the daughter who came back when my father had his stroke 11 months earlier. It was mild, but it changed the rhythm of everything. He could still walk. He could still argue. He could still pay bills if you gave him time. What he could not do anymore was pretend he did not need help. So I moved into the downstairs bedroom in his duplex in Beachview, kept my hospital job, and built my life around medications, appointments, rent checks, grocery lists, and the kind of small details that keep a man steady after his body scares him. Connor is my older brother by 7 years. He works in sales and talks like every room is already his. He likes speed. He likes summaries. He likes being the first person to explain what is happening before anyone else can read enough to disagree. Growing up, he could turn one sentence into a full version of reality if he said it fast enough and with enough confidence. That was always the difference between us. Connor knows how to manage people. I know how to notice what they skip. He is louder. I am more precise. He pushes. I wait. He counts on exhaustion. I count details. I did not grow up trying to beat my brother. I grew up learning how not to let him define me. That is why when he stood on our father's porch with new keys in one hand and my clothes in a trash bag at my feet, I did not waste time arguing about his tone. I watched what he touched. And I remembered exactly what my father had told me to do when Connor started talking too quickly. My father was Frank Ruiz, and he believed in two things more than he believed in people sounding certain. He believed in paid property taxes and clean paperwork. We were not rich. The duplex in Beachview was the only real asset he had, a brick place on a sloped street with a narrow porch, a stubborn front door, and a second-floor unit he rented out month to month. That house paid for its own repairs when the furnace acted up, covered groceries when medical bills hit, and gave my father one thing he valued more than comfort. It gave him independence. Dad lived downstairs. The upstairs unit was rented by a widow named Marlene who never missed rent and always salted the sidewalk before sunrise in the winter. Dad trusted her. He trusted routine. He trusted records. Every utility receipt, every insurance notice, every tax statement had a place. Not in a neat office. He did not have one. In the pantry, behind old tablecloths and a stack of paper grocery bags, he kept a black metal lockbox with a silver dial and a loose hinge on the left side. That box mattered more than most people in our family understood. Inside it were labeled folders, spare keys, a little cash, and short notes written in blue ink on yellow sticky pads. Pay by the 10th. Call before signing. Read page 2 again. He wrote reminders the way other people say prayers. Small, direct, and meant to keep disaster from getting a vote. Connor hated that box. Not because he wanted the cash. There was never much in it. He hated what it represented. Structure. Delay. Proof. He liked decisions made in the air. Dad liked them pinned down. That tension got worse after the stroke. Connor started dropping by with quick ideas that always sounded generous for the first 10 seconds. Sell the upstairs unit furniture. Refinance while rates look decent. Put both names on an account to make things easier. Let me help simplify this. He used that word a lot. Simplify. What he meant was speed. What Dad wanted was clarity. 7 months before he died, Dad changed lawyers. 6 months before he died, he asked me to witness a typed inventory list of personal property, then slid the first page away before I could read. More. You will know when you need to, he said. A week later, Connor came by, saw the new law office business card on the fridge, and went quiet for the first time in his life. He stared at it, smiled too late, and asked whether Dad was overreacting again. Dad did not answer. He just tapped the pantry door once, like the house knew where the truth was kept. The first thing I did after Connor shoved that trash bag toward me was not cry, argue, or beg. I called Aunt Rosa and asked if I could sleep on her couch for one night. Then I sat in her guest room with my shoes still on, replaying every word my brother had said on the porch. He had only spoken for maybe 30 seconds, but Connor had a pattern. He always gave away too much when he thought he was already in control. Dad made it simple. House is mine. You need to go. I will deal with the tenant upstairs after probate. That last line stayed with me. Not because of the legal term. Connor loved words that sounded official. It was the word tenant that hit wrong. My father never called Marlene a tenant when he talked to family. Never. She had lived upstairs for 3 years. He called her Marlene, or the lady upstairs, or sometimes just she paid early again if he was in a good mood. But Connor stood on that porch the same day Dad was buried and called her the tenant upstairs like he had been reading from paperwork, not memory. That was the first clean crack in his version. He was not guessing what the will said. He had already gone looking. The more I replayed it, the clearer it got. He had walked back into the kitchen before locking the door. He had opened the junk drawer. He had taken the yellow envelope. And he had started talking like someone who believed the room would accept summary instead of source. So I texted him one line. Then read it. He replied 4 minutes later. I already know what it says. Not I read it. Not the lawyer read it. Not you will hear it tomorrow. I already know. That answer told me more than he meant to. If Connor had actually wanted the truth, he would have quoted it. That was his style when facts helped him. He loved repeating the exact part that made him look right. But this time he stayed general. Broad. Clean. Safe. He thought speed could replace proof because people hate discomfort. By midnight, I was no longer asking whether my brother had crossed a line. I knew he had. I just did not know how far. And for the first time since Dad died, the grief inside me shifted shape. It was still heavy. Still real. But underneath it, something colder locked into place. Connor was not stronger than me that night. He was just earlier. And early only works until someone starts reading. The next morning, I went back to the duplex with Aunt Rosa before 9. I told her I needed my work bag, my charger, and the folder where I kept Dad's medical discharge papers. That was true. I also wanted to see whether Connor sounded as certain in daylight as he had on the porch the night before. He was in the driveway when we pulled up, talking on his phone with that smooth voice he used when he wanted to sound like the adult in the room. He ended the call as soon as he saw me and looked at Aunt Rosa first, not me. "You should have let her rest," he said. "I am here to get my things," I said. "I put your things out," he said. "No," I said. "You put out what you wanted seen." Aunt Rosa exhaled beside me. Connor heard it and straightened, like an audience had taken its seat. "Elena," he said, "the lawyer is going to explain everything this afternoon. There is no reason to make a scene now." "Then do not make one," I said. "Read it." His jaw tightened. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that depended on other people wanting peace more than accuracy. "I already told you what Dad decided." "That is not what I asked," I said. "Read it." He looked at Aunt Rosa again. "You see what I am dealing with. She is exhausted. She has not slept. She is taking one thing and turning it into something ugly." I did not raise my voice. "You changed the locks before the funeral flowers were dead," I said. "You took an envelope out of the kitchen drawer. You told me to leave before any documents were read. If your version is clean, say the exact words." Connor laughed once. "This house was always going to me." "Always is not a legal phrase," I said. "Read it." He took 2 steps toward me. Not threatening. Just controlling. That was his style. Close the distance. Lower the voice. Make it sound personal so everyone else backs away. "Dad was being practical," he said. "You were staying here because he needed help. He is gone now. That arrangement is over." "Then read the line that says that," I said. He looked past me toward the upstairs window. Marlene had shifted the curtain. She was listening. So was Mrs. Keller from next door, pretending to sweep pollen off her steps. "Why are you doing this outside?" he asked. "Because you threw me out outside," I said. "I am handling the estate," he said. "No," I said. "You are handling the room. Those are different things." His face changed then. The smile dropped. The salesman disappeared. What was left looked older and careful. "You really want to do this in front of everybody," he said. "You started in front of everybody," I said. "I am just asking you to be specific in front of the same people." Aunt Rosa spoke. "Connor, if there is a paper, let her hear it." He turned to her fast. "There are procedures, Tia. That is why there is a lawyer." "Good," I said. "Then stop talking like you are the lawyer." For 1 second, nobody moved. Even the street felt paused. Then Connor reached into his jacket pocket. My body locked. But he did not pull out the yellow envelope. He pulled out a ring of keys and held them up between 2 fingers. "You are not coming back in until after the meeting," he said. I looked at the keys, then at him. "That is fine," I said. "Keep the locks. Keep the porch. Keep performing certainty for the neighborhood. But this afternoon, in that office, you are either going to read what is written or sit there while somebody else does it for you." He said nothing. That was the first time since Dad died that Connor had the chance to prove me wrong and chose silence instead. And silence, on him, sounded like fear. After we left the duplex, Connor did exactly what I knew he would do. He went wide. By noon, Aunt Rosa had already gotten 2 calls. One from a cousin who said she was sorry I was taking Dad's death so hard. Another from a woman at church who said families say strange things in grief, and sometimes the kindest thing is to let one person handle the logistics. He had already built the first version of the story and handed it to people before I had even had lunch. He did not tell them he changed the locks before any reading. He did not tell them he pushed my clothes out in a trash bag. He said I was overwhelmed. He said I had been living with Dad for months and was struggling to accept what came next. He said Dad wanted everything simple. He said he was trying to protect me from paperwork while I was emotional. That is how social control works in a family. Nobody calls you a liar. They just pre-label your side as grief before it gets heard. For 20 minutes, I almost wasted energy calling people back. Then I stopped. Connor always won when the fight became messy too early. He wanted me reacting in 6 directions at once, so I would miss the one place he could not improvise. Paper. So I sat at Aunt Rosa's kitchen table with a half-cold coffee and opened the Notes app on my phone. I typed every line Connor had used since the porch. Dad made it simple. House is mine. You need to go. I will deal with the tenant upstairs after probate. I am handling the estate. The pattern was obvious once I saw it stacked together. Not one quote. Not one page number. Not one exact sentence from any document. Just conclusions. At 1:30, he texted me. The lawyer moved the meeting to 3. Please come calm. I wrote back one sentence. Send the full document set before the meeting. He did not respond. 12 minutes later, 3 photos hit my phone. They were dark, slanted, and cropped so tightly they were almost insulting. On one page, I could see Dad's full name near the top. On another, part of a signature block. The middle sections were cut off. The headers were missing. At 2:15, he showed up at Aunt Rosa's house with a blue folder under his arm and the same composed face he wore whenever he wanted credit for cleaning up a mess he had caused. He set the folder on the table and looked at me like the morning had never happened. I am trying to keep this clean, he said. He opened the folder and pushed 3 forms toward me. These are just temporary cooperation papers, he said. Routine stuff so the estate can move without delay. Routine. Clean. Temporary. Connor loved safe words. I did not touch the pages right away. Silence always made him talk more. It just confirms you picked up your belongings and you are staying with Rosa for now, he said. It also lets me coordinate records and property access until distribution. Nothing dramatic. Coordinate. Another soft word covering a grab. I pulled the first page closer. Temporary vacancy acknowledgement. The second was an estate cooperation form. The third was a release for access to records. Aunt Rosa leaned in and asked, "Is this normal?" Connor smiled without looking at her. Totally normal. I started at the bottom because forms tell the truth fastest near the signature line. My name was typed under a paragraph that said I had voluntarily vacated the primary residence of the decedent and had no expectation of continued occupancy during estate administration. Another sentence said all household access decisions would be made by the acting family representative until final distribution. I looked up. Who drafted these? I asked. The law office, he said too fast. Then have the law office email them to me, I said. Why does that matter? He asked. Because if a law office prepared them, a law office can send them. He gave a small laugh, thin and irritated. Elena, do not do this. Read paragraph 3 out loud, I said. His face changed. Not anger first. Exposure. You do not need to make everything adversarial, he said. Then read it, I said. Connor picked up the page, skimmed it, then summarized instead. It just says there is no confusion about where you are staying while I handle things. That was enough. Same pattern. Same dodge. I slid the papers back across the table. I am not signing anything you summarize. He leaned back and stared at me for a second. He had expected grief to make me rushed, guilty, and easy. Instead, it had made me slower. Fine, he said. We will handle it at the office. Good, I said. He gathered the forms. One sheet snagged under his wrist and flipped halfway over. Printed on the back was part of an email chain, probably because he had used office scrap paper without checking. Most of the text was cut off, but one line was clean enough to read. Final will and codicil review with all named parties at 3 p.m. Codicil. Connor saw where my eyes landed and turned the stack over. That one word split his whole story open. He had been telling people Dad made everything simple. He had been acting like there was one obvious document and one obvious outcome. But codicil meant change. It meant addition. It meant the paperwork had moved after whatever version Connor wanted everyone to believe. I kept my face flat and asked the safest question I could. What time did you say the meeting was? 3, he said. Great, I said. Then we can all read everything together. His jaw flexed. You are really determined to make this harder than it needs to be, he said. No, I said. I am determined to make it complete. He left a minute later, folder under his arm, confidence still there but thinner now. As soon as the door closed, Aunt Rosa looked at me and said, "What is a codicil?" "A change to a will," I said. Her eyes widened. Then why would he hide that? Because if there is a change, I said, then he has not been protecting the truth. He has been managing the timing. At 2:40, I stopped answering calls. My phone lit up twice with unknown numbers and once with Marlene from upstairs. I texted her that I was heading into the meeting and would call later. Then I changed into the navy cardigan Aunt Rosa kept for church, tied my hair back, and checked my bag for wallet, badge, notebook, and pen. Connor always arrived armed with volume. I arrived with a page. We drove downtown in near silence. Pittsburgh looked gray and ordinary in the late afternoon, traffic inching, buses late, people crossing intersections like nobody else's family was detonating over probate language. The city did not care about our drama. Good. Systems work better when they are bored. The law office was on the 9th floor of a narrow building with brass names in the lobby and an elevator that groaned on the way up. Upstairs, the reception area smelled like copier toner and lemon polish. Quiet. Cold. Professional. Exactly the kind of room where Connor's voice would finally have to compete with structure. He was already there when Aunt Rosa and I walked in, coat unbuttoned, posture relaxed, talking low to Dana by the window like he had spent the whole day behaving perfectly. He turned when he saw me and reset his face into patience. "Glad you made it," he said. I sat down across from him and set my notebook on the table. For the first time all day, nobody in that room cared who spoke first. They were about to care what was written. The lawyer introduced herself as Ms. Lang. No long condolences. She confirmed names, set a tabbed document packet in front of each of us, and said she would read the controlling estate documents in order. Connor leaned back like a man waiting for his own victory. Dana sat beside him. Aunt Rosa adjusted her glasses. I opened my notebook and waited. Ms. Lang started with the earlier will, the one Connor had clearly been using to build his version. For about 10 seconds, I understood why he had moved so fast. That document did sound simple. Personal items divided evenly. Savings split. Broad language about the duplex passing through the estate. Connor heard that much and turned toward me. "See," he said. "Exactly what I told you." Ms. Lang did not look up. She turned one page, then another, then pulled a second packet from the folder. "This codicil and trust transfer were executed 7 months later," she said. "They control where they conflict with prior language." Connor stopped moving. The room changed without anyone raising a voice. Ms. Lang read slowly. My father had transferred the duplex into a revocable living trust. During his lifetime, he remained trustee. Upon his death, the successor trustee was not Connor. It was me. Connor let out one short laugh. "For what purpose?" he asked. "For administration, preservation of the property, and continued residence rights under Section 4, Ms. Lang said. Connor blinked. "Residence rights," he repeated. Ms. Lang turned to a marked page. "Your father left a note on this section," she said. He asked that if there was any disagreement, Connor should read this paragraph aloud himself. No one moved. Then, she slid the page across the table. "Please." Connor stared at it. "You can summarize," he said. "No," Ms. Lang replied. "I can read it. But your father asked that you do it." That was it. All day Connor had relied on getting to the room first. Now the room was already set. All he had left was the page. He picked it up. His voice held for the first line, then started thinning. "Any beneficiary or family representative who attempts to remove a lawful occupant of trust property, misrepresents controlling estate documents, or pressures another named party to waive access, occupancy, or review before full disclosure shall forfeit administrative authority and bear resulting costs against his or her share of final distribution." He stopped. Nobody helped him. "That is ridiculous," he said. "She is not a lawful occupant." "I was living there with Dad for 11 months, I said. "My clothes were there. My work things were there. My records were there. You put them in a trash bag." Dana looked down. Aunt Rosa exhaled once through her nose. Connor turned back to Ms. Lang. "He was sick," Connor said. "He was being influenced." Ms. Lang opened another tab. "Your father anticipated that claim," she said. "There is a physician competency statement dated 2 weeks before execution. There is also a letter of intent and a written note regarding an earlier access dispute in March." Connor went still again. I had not known about the March note. That meant my father had been tracking more than I understood. Ms. Lang continued. Your father wrote that Elena interrupted a prior effort to discuss changing access to the house while he was medicated. He directed that any later attempt to rush property control be treated as deliberate. Connor looked at me then. So what, he said. She gets the whole house now. No, Ms. Lang said. The trust does not give her the property outright. Ms. Ruiz serves as successor trustee. She has the right to remain in the residence and manage the property under the trust terms. Final distribution is separate. Connor tried one last time. Dad wanted fairness, he said. Then fairness is what he drafted, Ms. Lang answered. I finally spoke. That is not your version, Connor. That is what you just read. He looked at me hard, but he had nothing left that could outrun the sentence. In front of him, the locks, the forms, the calls, the porch performance. All of it had been built on one assumption. That he could move faster than the truth. He had, just not farther. Ms. Lang then explained the immediate consequences. Connor had no authority to act for the estate or the duplex. Costs tied to the lock change, document interference, and my forced removal would be tracked against his eventual share. I would be given re-entry authority that day. Connor stayed frozen over the same paragraph. It did not open for him in that room for everyone to hear. Dad had not left me revenge. He left structure. And structure had just spoken in my brother's own voice. We left the law office just after 4, and for the first time since my father died, the air around me felt cold in a clean way instead of a crushing one. Not lighter. Just accurate. Grief was still there. It still sat behind my ribs like weight I could not set down. But now it had edges. Now it had language. Connor had not lost because I outshouted him. He lost because he tried to outrun a document my father had built to stop exactly that kind of man. Ms. Lang handed me the re-entry letter before we stepped out. She also gave me copies of the trust pages and the codicil. Aunt Rosa rode back with me in silence, holding the folder in her lap like it needed guarding. Halfway across Fort Pitt Bridge, she looked at me and said I should have spoken up on the porch. I kept my eyes on the road and told her the truth. He was counting on that. When we reached Beachview, Connor's car was gone. The new brass lock still hung on the front door like a cheap flag planted too early. I used the temporary access letter. A locksmith came within the hour. By 6:30, I was back inside my father's kitchen, standing under the yellow light above the sink, looking at the same counter where casseroles had been stacked the day before. My hospital badge was still where I had left it. My phone charger was still plugged in beside the wall. The house did not look abandoned. It looked interrupted. The yellow envelope was not in the junk drawer anymore. Of course it was not. But that did not matter now. The real protection had never been a hidden envelope. It was the structure behind it. Over the next 2 weeks, the consequences became practical. Connor lost any role in administering the duplex. The cost of the lock change, the emergency locksmith, and the extra legal review were logged against his share. Ms. Lang sent everything in writing. Nobody had to argue. Numbers did the work. Procedure did the work. Truth did not need a louder voice. It needed a record. Marlene stayed upstairs. She knocked on my door next morning with banana bread and said she had heard enough through the floorboards to know not to believe the version making the rounds. Aunt Rosa called 2 relatives back and corrected herself without dressing it up. Even Dana stopped texting me peace offerings and sent one sentence that mattered more. I did not know he had changed the locks that fast. That was enough. I was not looking for apologies shaped like theater. I just wanted the lies to lose oxygen. Connor and I did not repair anything after that. Some stories do not end with a tearful reunion around a dining room table. Sometimes the healthy ending is smaller and harder. A line holds. A key turns. A person who kept trying to define you runs out of room. I stayed in the duplex. I reorganized the pantry. I replaced the old lockbox with a new fireproof binder and labeled every section the way Dad would have liked. Taxes. Insurance. Utilities. Lease. Trust. Clear. Boring. Safe. That was his kind of love. Not speeches. Systems. What I learned is simple. Some people do not steal by force. They steal by speed. They talk first. They summarize. They rush your signature. They call your caution drama and your questions disrespect. They want you tired enough to accept their version because reading takes energy and energy is hard to find when your heart is broken. Do not give them that shortcut. If someone keeps asking you to trust their version, stop listening. Ask to read it.